Welcome. This is the Late Late Show with BT, where views with security and law are being provided to you, the public. Today, we'll be reading from Red Book, June 2016, Cosmopolitan, July 2016, TNC Travel, Spring Summer 2016, Town and Country, May 2016, Good Housekeeping, November 2015, Parents, December 2016, Parents, July 2016, Parents, June 2016. Now, as a reminder, everything that's broadcast with the show is always the Late Late Show with BT version. So we share the sources. We started doing that. When we first started doing the show, we didn't broadcast where the sources came from. However, we documented it. You know, the sources were documented where it came from. But they showed BT's version, and that's why if you were to cross-reference the sources, you wouldn't get it it wouldn't be from the beginning to the end of the source, because we pull out what's pertinent to us and vibe about, you know, what that bulk of information, whether it's a line, whether it's a paragraph, or whatever that bulk of information is, we vibe about that. So similarly, when there's any type of vocal presentations done, granted, we get that there are those organizations, those, you know, who attempt to business or claim rights to certain songs or lyrics. But when it comes to the intellectual property and the interpretation, that becomes original and that remains owned by, you know, the show and myself and or my co-host. So that's really kind of how it is. We don't claim ownership to anything that isn't our intellectual property. And we don't go into anyone else's interpretation. We stay within what the show has with whatever it is that we present. And I'm sharing that because a reminder came to me about when you broadcast that you are agreeing to that you own whatever it is that you're doing. And yes, when it comes to the intellectual, if you get intellectual property, it becomes a little different. Like when there's a line, like for instance, I'm looking at one that says Sun Smarts. You know, when it comes to that person's, it's specific to that person's ID and how they specifically, that person individually interpreted that. And that is what they own. They're not owning what this particular person's social security number was thinking about when they wrote it. They own what they individually perceived or interpreted. That is what is owned. So when it comes to ownership and rights, it can be very complicated when it comes to intellectual property and intellectual property law. Because when you hear something, you know, I don't want to say an amateur or a layman would just be like, they're saying my words. But when it comes to interpretation and intellectual property, it becomes more complicated than that. So with that being said, we did a separate broadcast of a story that that has came to us with regards to adoption and ethics when it comes to adoption in the States and international adoptions. And that brought about John Legend. So to adopted individuals, it's relative to. So the question was, who is John Legend? Because, you know, from what we have with who we are, John Legend couldn't be both them and us, except with. But when it comes to that individual ID, there has to be a settle. You know, your ID has to settle somewhere. So it's like either like this or you're like that. You know, when you're in the middle, which is a lot of times how things are, you still kind of go one way or the other, but not really both. So we're going to present that again today. We had shared, one of the books that we had shared was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I mentioned my pastor had brought it up. I mentioned that it had came up a long time ago with girlfriends. But there are some omissions, and we'd like to share that. However, the book today, we're going to address World War Z by Max Brooks. And we'll get into that a little bit later on because that's towards the end of the show. Some updates. So we are in Union, Virginia Union University, which is located in Richmond, Virginia. We did begin, which is going to be quite interesting. It has been interesting thus far, and it's only been a week. So we did begin that. We are still in trial with regards to the sex offender. And I don't really have any good comments to say about it at this particular time. You know, it's just that the only thing that I would like to say is that, you know, when it comes to local, city, and state interests and law and order, that I want to keep my belief in the authenticity of law and order, which is another reason why I'm doing this show, you know, with regards to security and law, because of that appreciation and that acknowledgement and that support of its authenticity. So I'm not going to allow any concerns that I have about employment choices to stray me away from that support of its authenticity. You know, the city has been going through a lot with regards to this sex offender, and the challenge is that for me, I feel that the type of sex offenders that the show be up against, that it's not as always pronounced in terms of sight and visual. It's not generally, it's not general knowledge. So we be up against that a lot. So the challenge be, how do you put something in someone's general knowledge, frame of reference, where they could adequately provide justice. So that's really kind of what it was about. I wasn't even going to testify, but I did, you know, and I felt as though who was supposed to be representing me kind of turned and couldn't not even adequately represent my interests, or these interests that not only I have personally, but with regard to this show. Because what went down was relative to what this show is up against. So it's not just me personally, you know, I look at it as though it's not me personally that's on trial, which is why I'm sharing it with you. It's what this show is up against. And, you know, it's our strength, you know, and a lot of times when you have strengths, you can't really count on others to identify your strengths. You still have to know and have, you know, well, when it's in yours to have that knowledge of your strengths, then, you know, because sometimes it gets skewed when there are those that have misidentified strengths as their own, you know, and it becomes a situation where they can't be a character witness to your strengths. So you have to be mindful of that when it comes to humility and when it comes to humanity, when dealing with different people and having to interact with different people. You have to understand levels in reality, you know, when it comes to certain things like being a public, you know, doing this publicly and it being up against or in a courtroom that isn't, you know, where you don't feel, you know, where it's, you know, there's that question about um, um, the, you know, the court representative getting it, you know, because it really isn't in their court, you know. Um, but a court for the public, because that's the whole point of having a show like this, to have that shield and that stronghold that is a stronghold that is preventive of offense and offenders to the innocent. So that's something. And one thing that I want to share is by starting this program, it's totally different for me. It's a different experience in that, like, I didn't even get to choose my classes. You know, when I had experience before, like you're like, okay, you get to choose what classes you want to take and when you want to take them. You know, but it wasn't done that way. And my very first class was a criminal justice class. I'm like, wow. You know, and you don't get to pick your topic. It's going to be given to you, which isn't going to really be a challenge because I feel as though, like, especially when doing this show, it's like when I get these sources, yeah, I know that one source is Red Book. I know that the other source is Cosmopolitan, you know, so you kind of get how that product is. TNC Travel, you know, it's going to be something about travel, town and country. You know, that's going to be something about town and country. Good Housekeeping Parents is going to be something with family and parents. But that's about it. You know, when I pull out things and I go through it, I'm still not reading it. It's all done live because I want to experience that live component with the audience. So by doing this show, you know, and it doesn't really bother me that someone's picking a topic, because it's like going through this and doing this show and you don't really pick the topic, you know, you just vibe about whatever comes, whatever is talked about. But with doing that, you still have to have a sense of censorship that's already built in because it is live. So I mentioned that World War Z is the book for the day. And what I found interesting is that I happened to view the movie, and what the movie did was, sometimes when you're in a family, like I claim it's my name and I claim that family name, you know. So sometimes you don't know what's going on with this one or what's going on with that one because you're going through your life, they're going through their life. And unless something brings something together or connects you in a way. And so the movie was able to do that. World War Z was able to connect some experience that I had with a perspective that this member of family was going through. And um, bring in the art form of acting and the art form of film and the art form of art. Was different from the book because it was able to do that. It was able to go into some real experiences because it used actual people. However, during the book, then we can stay, it's like it could stay on topic with what the title of it is. You know, it's an oral history of the zombie war. It can stay on topic with regards to the world of zombies. But when it came to the movie, it was able to go out of that. So we did view the movie. So, you know, anything that we view or whether we broadcast it or not, we feel as though it's fit to be viewed by you, the public. So, unless your clothes are made to block UV, pick dark or bright colors and stretchy or woven fabrics such as lycra or polyester. Michelle Berniker, co-president of Sun Love Peace, who survived melanoma. So I think it kind of is touching on that thing about like perception, whether it's a misperception to some or it's not, that dark clothes shouldn't be worn when it's really, really hot because it attracts hotness. So this person is, when it comes to, you know, she's the co-president of Sun Love Peace, who survived melanoma, is suggesting that you pick dark or bright colors when it comes to the sun. So when I really got into, like, I really, you know, because I was, for a long time, I've been, my degree, I have, my first degree is in fashion. And, you know, I have some experience, but not the experience that I was hoping to gain in it. And so when I started doing this show, I started getting it a whole lot, just like those things like that, you know. Like when you're in fashion, you're supposed to, you know, take reign of those type of myths and misperceptions and get what community it's relative to and what community it isn't. It's not for everyone. Some people can wear a lot of black in the summertime and it not be hot, you know, but on the other, you know, but in the different other communities, it may not be that way. We used to live with litter box odor. So I use a litter bag or something like that in my car to collect my trash. It's like a kitty litter bag for your trash, but it's not an actual litter box. Just a little tidbit. The taste bud tempter. best time to board, best time for a cockpit visit, best time to get off the plane. So for me, the best time to board is on time. The best time for a cockpit visit, the best time to get off the plane, when everything is moving, is flowing. The best time for a cockpit visit. The best time for a cockpit visit. Pack the bedtime gear. Sidestep time zone trouble. Virginia Soul Smith. I've always been into natural remedies and essential oils, so when a friend brought the products by, I was happy to give them a try, explains the mom in Oak Park, Illinois, who was pregnant with her second child at the time. And if I can make a commission, all the better. Johnson decided to sign up as a wellness advocate, which seemed to offer the biggest product discount. It only cost $35 to register, and her friend explained that the best deal was to join the doTERRA Loyalty Rewards Program. This would commit Johnson to buying a minimum of $100 in oils every month, but she would also receive a Fast Start cash bonus, 20% of whatever her customers spent, and even more discounts. After a year of trying to make the business work, Johnson says her net income was negative $3,298. William W. Keith, PhD, a marketing researcher and dean of the business school at the College of New Jersey, has studied the industry for 30 years. But critics say that it's almost impossible to make a real income. While the Direct Selling Association, or DSA, reports that the industry's estimated retail sales reached $34.5 billion in 2014, Dr. Keith's research of several major MLM companies shows that the average salesperson earns less than $750 per year before expenses, a figure that has remained stagnant since 1980. Direct selling businesses used to be entirely home-based, with neighbors throwing Tupperware potlucks or shopping parties. And women today say that rather than bringing them closer to their community, the onslaught of aggressive sales pitches can put a strain on friendships, both online and in real life. Here's what you need to be aware of before you sign up for that amazing business opportunity popping up in your Facebook feed. Your pressure to buy products. These companies earn money by inducing their salespeople to buy products they wouldn't normally have bought in quantities they probably don't need. doTERRA's executive vice president of sales and marketing notes that while some advocates do give out free samples, the practice is absolutely not required by the company. While she confirms that wellness advocates are required to spend $100 to earn the Fast Start bonus, she insists no one has to spend anything to be able to earn commissions. You should also avoid any ongoing commitment to have products auto-shipped to you and be skeptical of pressure to place new inventory orders every month or season just because the company has released a new line. Last, be wary of recruiters who tell you that purchasing isn't required, but the unofficial pressure can still be intense. You have to ask, how are people actually participating in the business? In the case of doTERRA, Wright insists that consultants don't face any unofficial pressure to buy. Our product is highly consumable, so they're really just replacing the products they use day in and day out when they place their order each month. They typically do because they like and use the product. The most dangerous part of the success story strategy may be their implication that if you fail, it's your own fault. Stopped several years ago, but then later decided to start selling Narium skincare products. The company emphasized social media marketing over home parties. You're definitely not required to recruit anyone. We have people who build their business based purely on product sales. Darren's chief marketing officer, who explains that training is a mix of leadership development and product orientation. Whether you call it team building or stepping out of your comfort zone, the problem with recruiting is that eventually you run out of people. Many MLMs tell consultants they just need to recruit 2 people to make their business work, because then those people will each find 2 more recruits and so on. But the Just Get Two plan doesn't account for the high dropout rate with MLMs. Investigations by the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, and research by Fitzpatrick have shown that many companies, anywhere from 50 to 90% of consultants, quit after their first year. Fitzpatrick has studied 500 such businesses over the past 15 years and concludes that consultants need a team of at least 200 people under them to keep the business sustainable. And building your own team of 200 is nearly impossible because the MLM model reaches market saturation quickly. Spent $99 on her starter kit and says she only made 2 individual sales. The one part she tried to book was canceled due to lack of interest. When told her recruiter that she was having trouble finding customers who weren't already her own competition, she says she felt dismissed. I can't deny that it's possible to be successful, says Dr. Keith, noting that the people featured in the company's success stories were often early recruits, able to build their downline before reaching market saturation. In fact, it's necessary for a few people to be successful in order to sell everyone else on the plan. But the notion that anyone can do this is a fallacy. Indeed, earnings statements obtained in investigations by the FTC show that many salespeople are making only a modest income from their MLM businesses. Unfortunately, getting your hands on these earnings statements can be tough. MLMs are required to release them. You may receive an income disclosure statement from the company, but there are no federal regulations overseeing what companies put in those documents. The most dangerous part of the success story strategy may be their implication that if you fail, it's your own fault. Individuals have a responsibility to be thoughtful about the business they're getting involved in, says Joseph Mariano, president of the Direct Selling Association, the industry's main trade group. Another way to put that is, you get out what you put in, a popular MLM mantra, often used in motivational speeches where recruits are told you don't have to be average and are encouraged to buy more products, attend more meetings, and to remove negative people, as in family or friends who question the business's viability from their life. Visit consumer.ftc.gov/scam-alerts to check whether a company you're considering working with or for has been investigated by the Federal Trade Commission. But the key distinction between a legit MLM and an illegal pyramid scheme is the emphasis on retail sales, according to the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC. If the money you make from an MLM business is based on your sales to the public, it may be a legitimate multi-level marketing plan. But it can be tricky to evaluate the role of retail sales before you join. The key is that a pyramid scheme makes most of its money when people in the distribution network buy those products and or pay various fees associated with membership, says Dr. Keith. There are operations out there that say they're all about selling product, but then whisper on the side that all you really have to do is recruit people, says Joseph Mariano of the Direct Selling Association. So for me, I think I went to maybe 1 or 2 of those type of things. I don't recall exactly what it was, or what the product was, but you know, that situation where you sell this, you know, they tell people about it, you bring them on, they sell, you get a percentage of what they sell, and as long as, you know, then people keep bringing other people on, and it's like a pyramid where you start here and everybody that comes under you get a percentage of theirs, and you still getting percentages of yours. It's kind of like that is what they're talking about, that some of those are schemes that they're illegal, but when it focuses on actual sales and not just trying to get people in and get money off what they sell, that is more legit and is focusing on sales and not recruiting people, is what I kind of get from here. There may be products out there that are more suited for that type of environment. I haven't really given it that much consideration. Um, I just never really like when it comes to girls, when it comes to something like, being in the Girl Scouts and, selling this or selling Girl Scout cookies or selling whatever product they have, for something like the Girl Scouts, like, yeah, I was into that, but, like there's those different organizations, like there's one where it's like, like if you're a cosmopolitan reader, you may be, a part of this party, like that Arthur Zane, that will write about different parties where it's like where they have sex toys and lingerie, like they have, like I've come across one like that where, um, like I haven't been that type of sales woman where, I can just invite all these people to different parties and, have them buy this product. I'm not saying that that's not, because people have built lives and bought homes and cars and have been successful with those type of um, businesses, because it definitely, you can't deny that there's not a clientele for certain things, because some people don't like ready to wear, don't like going to the malls or going to the stores, like they can't appreciate those experiences, and they prefer something where it's in a home or it's in a uh, convention center or it's in some type of, you know motel lobby or something where they feel as though they're in an elite clientele or it's exclusively for them. They've been invited. It's something that's, the closest to maybe couture that they can get. So there's, uh, it's acknowledged that there's a market, that there could be a market for that, like middle to upper class, you know. But um, I haven't found myself being interested to attend, and haven't found myself being interested to be um, a presenter. Jeanette Monager. It puts us both at ease to approach the process as a team, says the Brooklyn Love. He spent hours researching the best crib, car seat, you name it, she says. Of course, not all guys love to build things. If yours does, you can put him in charge of assembling the crib and other baby furniture. Belly up to the baby. A man's deep tones will penetrate into the womb, and there are reasons to believe that infants remember the rhythms of both parents' voices after they're born. It doesn't have to be an exotic baby room, although a last-minute trip with your doctor's approval can be a fantastic escape. In addition to recharging and relaxing, you can use this time to bounce around baby names and share your worries, hopes, and dreams for your new family. So yeah, I started getting like right around the time I started doing the show, I started getting into assembly. Um, so I can definitely see myself trying to put up a crib or other, baby furniture, because it's something about assembling something yourself that, like, um, one thing that I did, I gave it away, which I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, because I was moving out of state and I was questioning the transport and all of this stuff, so I just gave it away to someone that could use it. But now I'm thinking, like, I put so much time into assembling that maybe that wasn't a good call. And when I tried to assemble a similar one when I got into state, it just didn't happen. So I had to do like a smaller version, a smaller scale version. But I could definitely see myself, you know, trying to assemble a crib, because it's something about, it's like you did it. You put the nail in it, you hammered it. It was your hammer, it was your nail, you know. It was your interpretation of the directions that made it happen. So it's something about that I like. Um, And another thing that I thought about was, there's always been, I don't know, a straddler when it comes to pregnancy intercourse or pregnancy sex. So I always kind of straddle there, whether it's okay or whether it's not, and like viewing the L Word, and there was that sex scene when Tina was pregnant and she still had sex with someone outside of who was supposedly supposed to be like the baby's mother, second mother. Like that scene to me was just like, oh, like what are they doing? Like how and why did they put that in there? What are they trying to eliminate or terminate in that situation? But so I'm still like, on one hand, like, it's great for the baby because it's something that is for you, and it's like something that you created with someone. But on the other hand, I'm like, when you've actually created that and you've succeeded and you're pregnant, that's like it stops there. Until the baby is born, and then you have a chance to become pregnant again, I guess. Because the purpose, like, it depends on where that relationship is, because like if you had to put your foot down and you're like, okay, we can go into this one together for population purposes and for creation purposes, then once that happens, like, there's no reason for anything during that time, because it already happened. Like, there's no, like, why would you engage in lovemaking during pregnancy when the purpose has already clearly been established? So I've just kind of like on both ends of that type of situation. Michelle Crouch. Yet most haven't set up Wi-Fi parental controls or time limits on their kids' devices, maybe because the process is so daunting. Download YouTube Kids, which offers everything they love about the video channel in a protective bubble. The simple interface is designed for kids 5 and under and includes a voice search for pre-readers. Plug Koala Safe into your existing router or Clean Router into a modem, then select which content to block and set time limits by device. Download the app to a smartphone or tablet and then set time limits for how much it can be used per day and when. Touch the overview button at the bottom of your phone, tap the pen that pops up in the lower right-hand corner and hit start. To disable the home button so your child can't close an app he's playing on, tap Settings, General, Accessibility, Guided Access. Triple-click the home button to launch Guided Access and click Start. Fire, yes, you can create 2 password-protected adult accounts and 4 child accounts. It's easy for you to toggle between them. Your child's device can be used as a regular Fire tablet by switching to the adult setting on the free time profile. Windows 10 kids over 8 may be able to use a Windows 10 tablet in place of a PC or laptop. So growing up, I wasn't really technical savvy. So, I guess I'm a little protective when it comes to technology and having children, and I don't really know if I'm gonna like, it's like, there's those ones that's when I want my child to be up to date with the rest of the kids and what's that word? Not marketable, but competitive. And if this is what they're doing within my child, but I know how to use but I know how to use something that's connected to a router or understand voice search when it comes to YouTube Kids and may not know the difference between an Android or iOS device, but know how to navigate one. May not know the difference between Windows 10 or Fire, but know how to use a tablet. So when it comes to those things, I feel as though I am protected. I don't think that I'm that type that's gonna be, my child has to have like the newest gadget. Um, like right now, like I'm not motivated to be that, to be that type of parent. Um, because it's so, maybe it's because, of going through a program that, a technological program, and, maybe there's some hesitation when it comes to that, just from being protective, and getting it, and, because it's just one of those things, like you want your children to have something, but you want to be present and when they're innocent and going through stuff and not making decisions for themselves, and you don't want them to be preyed upon. And because I don't know if it's something that you know they, I don't know if it's something I can just support them just being in, like um like I'm more open to something like how they have the children museums, and they have different little things in the children's museum. So I'm open to something like a children's museum or something in a children's museum that explores, this type of technology or this type of technology or this, and by way of that, there's this or there's that technology that is connected to that source. Like I'm more open to something like that as opposed to just, like here you go, here's your tablet, or you know, um, something that's specific, like it's specifically for this, and they've explored it. Is they have an exploratory program, an exploratory place, um, that is protective and keeps certain offenders out, and they have proven results of it, that I can support. Start with tomato base. And in that tomato base, bring to a boil Big Fish, Little Fish by Jonathan Litton. In this bubbly tale about how eels, hammerheads, titlers, and other sea creatures spend their day, fish-shaped cutouts help hold the attention of our toddler testers, birth to 3, and it goes to about $8. Saint Nick by the book. It's okay to be nervous about meeting him. To prove that the big guy was really there. So I don't remember meeting Santa Claus, but I do have pictures of him coming to our house. So, but I don't even remember it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that happened. That's pretty cool. You know, keep them busy this holiday season. Jennifer Torres Sliders. Adults should do everything possible to help toddlers learn to be empathetic, says Carol Ann Wine, PhD, an early childhood expert and professor emeritus at York University in Toronto. Even the Chinese toddlers might not have the words for some of the big emotions they encounter. That's one reason a mom in Anaheim, California used to bring up feelings in conversations with her then 2-year-old son, Victor. Victor might say ouch or fall, and then he'd go pat his brother on the back, she says. Expand on his realization that others' feelings may not be the same as his own by encouraging interaction with many kinds of people. Letting him help care for a family pet by pouring its food into a bowl or brushing its fur will give him a daily opportunity to think beyond himself. So it's like, that's a great suggestion, but you wonder how something can be effective when you didn't go through that yourself. Like, I never had a pet. So I don't know, like, I like pets, I like animals, but by me never having a pet, I don't know what would be different in a person's character, especially when you get your own, so should you exclude that so that, you can go with what is an experience that is known, or just allow that community to, your child to experience that community, because, it's just that, like, I never grew up with a pet. So it's like, your child will learn this and that from having a pet. But, what if you learned that without having one? So, it's just something to think about. Should you add different experiences? Stay with, the good things and keep out, and maybe it's just best to just appreciate what's in your child. Like, everyone has a different name. Every name has different meanings behind it, different experiences that probably are associated with it. So I'm not averse to having an experience that's different from mine, because everybody is different. Would you film your baby's birth and share it online? Oh my gosh. It was even difficult for me to watch. What was that movie? Was it Mo Better Blues or something like that, where they showed a childbirth and it was like the child coming out. It was difficult to watch in a movie. I don't want my birth, I do not want it filmed and sharing it online. No. If I'm want it filmed, it would be for my own purposes, to watch. And then I would edit it in a way where you don't see nothing coming out. All you see, or you don't see blood and all of this and that. You just get an experience. If I posted my last one, birth rates would plummet. Amanda Richardson Kent. Barry T. Michelle Crouch. Even your preschooler can begin to learn these essential life lessons. You can begin teaching your child. She is around 6. Lots of preschoolers learn to plant seeds in class, but not how. Scratch that out. Whitney Cohen, co-author of the book of Gardening Projects for Kids, shares the basics. Have them split 2 fingers apart so the stem of the plant goes between them, then squeeze the outside of the container until the plant comes out. If the roots are wound tightly, he should loosen them a few at a time before planting. Tear off at least 5 pieces of tape and line them along the edge of a table. Show her how to turn over and center the box. Bring the paper up on one side and tape it to the box. Then bring it up the other so it overlaps. Pull the paper tight and tape it down. Have her face an open end to water. Fold the top flap down on the side spread against the box to form triangular flaps. Then bring up the bottom piece and tape it. It's just one of those things, how to follow, how to take direction. Maps seem boring until you use them to look for booty. Cleaning the bathroom. Big kids can scrub the bowl with a non-toxic cleaner, sprinkle the sides with baking soda, let it sit for a few minutes, pour in some vinegar, then scrub with a toilet brush. Teaching kids to be smart consumers takes practice. I tell my kids about some things I like to have. Lululemon yoga pants, anyone? But don't buy it because they're not in our budget. That's forced our kids to become savvy shoppers. So another thing, like I mentioned with the technology and is one children's museum that I went to, it could have been more than one, is where they teach them how to be shoppers. It's a grocery store, and they interact as as store representatives and shoppers. Balance the bustle of Springfield, Massachusetts, and Boston with the serenity of Cape Cod and the White Mountains of New Hampshire. I have full-size car seats installed for my twin girls, and yet there is still ample room between them for toys and books. Michelle Hasbrook, Sacramento, California. Jennifer Rainey Marquez. But I soon learned that I actually need to be just as diligent with her darker skin as I am with my own pale complexion. Below, the best ways to prevent and treat common warm weather woes. Covering your baby is better than applying sunscreen at this age. However, if you have a beach trip planned and can't realistically keep him under wraps the entire time, it's okay to use sunscreen on any of his exposed skin. For a 4 to 5 or 5-month-old, it's better to use sunscreen than for him to burn, says doctor. Scratching can sometimes cause the bite to become infected, so make sure you keep an eye on it. I will reject 99.96% of the world's finest diamonds because there's a difference between quality and Tiffany quality. On this trip, you don't even need to pack a toothbrush. Mary Kay Shilling. And not just travel, but circle the globe every 2 years, surrounded by your own art and sleeping in your own linens. Perhaps you didn't know this was a problem that needed solving, but then you are probably not a pathological explorer. This singular brand of high-end travel porn is enjoyed by the residents of the world's 165 apartments, each custom designed by its owner. Virtually anyone can be satisfied by the staff of this floating city, which offers pretty much everything short of brain surgery. The best restaurants in America are in Montreal, Jamie Rosen. So the three created the Noun, an airy massage boutique in Los Angeles that has decor reminiscent of the Koki Resort in Tulum, and a welcoming walk-in policy that goes into closing time, 10 p.m. And this visual, Just Breathe, is very welcoming. It has this, like, the massage bed, and this really funky looking rug on a bare floor. But then they have these really tall, like separative, I don't know, it's supposed to be like curtains, but it's just really tall over it. Like there's really tall ceilings. And it's very like straw. They have these like straw things. I don't know if they're straw lamps, but it looks welcoming, except for the what looks to be like rawhide that's hanging on the wall. Except for that, but it's the Now, NOW, in Los Angeles. So if you're there, check it out. Noble Birth, blue topaz. Natural blue topaz is very rare. The light blue varieties are found in Texas, where it happens to be the state stone. So in Texas, blue topaz is supposedly is rare and is the state stone. Kevin Conley. Given the tone of this year's presidential campaigns, it is perhaps not surprising that one of the most thoughtful voices working for social justice has no ambition to seek public office. The most remarkable thing about him may be that he speaks with a lulling, calm, and reasonable good humor, seemingly at all times, swapping what would be understandable fury for implacable logic. Regarding the death penalty, for instance, he says the best way to think about it is to replace the question, do people deserve to die for crimes they commit, with do we deserve to kill? Back then, it had a single mission to represent people on death row. Has won a MacArthur Grant and the Olaf Palm International Prize, and EJI research papers on lynching and the slave trade have hit the front page of the New York Times, providing careful documentation of previously unrecorded atrocities, and belief that reconciliation with our nation's difficult past cannot be achieved without truthfully confronting history. So when it comes to the death penalty, see, I didn't, before getting it a little bit, I didn't really support it because I kind of had that same question, like, hey, do we deserve to kill? Like, do you, what if this? What if that? What if you're wrong? What if you're not right? But, getting the justice system a little bit now, I kind of get how, death row and when you have to address the penalty. But I guess where the conflict for me comes when it comes to the death penalty is sometimes there's a conflict when it's supposed to be legalized, like when the court is supposed to um, like, like provide it as a service. That to me is where the conflict comes sometimes. But then there's the criminal justice system, which is a little different. So if we can just preserve the authenticity of law, then maybe we can get some clarity when it comes to like the penalty regarding death. Jamie Wilson. Right now, Manhattan is all about facials and brow services that come to you. And the brightest blonde, the blush. We may have stopped plucking our brows into oblivion, but that doesn't mean we don't need to groom them. You have to leave straight hairs if you want the rest to grow, said Scott, who used to be the assistant to West Coast brow queen and now counts as client. Between appointments, he recommends Brandolish Grand Brow to help fill in bald patches, and Marc Jacobs Grooming Gel, and Anastasia Brow Wiz for daily maintenance. A botanical boost. I used to go to the barbershop to get my eyebrows done. Because some girls from high school would go, and I liked there, so I would go. Um, and then I was in a relationship, or called myself in a relationship, thought I was in a relationship erroneously, and that guy or whatever used to do my brows. So I haven't really, since that, I haven't really, you know, got my brows done. One girl that used to do my dreads, she would do my brows. So I used to keep them maintained, but then I started appreciating just the natural flow of them, um, and just haven't, um, just stopped. Christine Lennon. When advises his patients on how best to maintain their faces and figures, his protocol these days includes a strict diet low in salt, sugar, and dairy, and a host of less invasive treatments to delay the knife or avoid it entirely. But the Insta lift for today sounds distinctly like the thread lift, which experienced a brief heyday and quick demise in the US around 2000. The threads were difficult to remove and susceptible to breakage, and patients were prone to infection as well as irregular or ropey contours in the skin. In the worst cases, the blue thread was visible beneath fine, pale skin, and there was visible tugging or pulling where the sutures were attached. The new procedure uses a soluble material, or polylactic acid resin, which is essentially a string of sugar that looks like thick surgical stored material studded with small bidirectional combs. But then again, the happy people don't come to me to be fixed. The material creates a reaction that helps to build connective tissue that holds the skin up, making it stronger and thicker. He says that because the results are temporary, most patients expect to have to repeat the process. The results were instant. Patients walked off the operating table and were comfortable, and you could already see the results before all the swelling set in. So it's just one of those things. I'm not into it, but I'm not going to judge anybody that, chooses, just be safe, and choose someone who, um, if it depends on you. If you can go into a community where it's always done like this, and you can be in that community and it be safe for you, then that's the doctor that you want to have. But if you have to have something that's a little bit different for you, um, then you may want to choose a doctor that does something a little bit different for you. And I don't know if it's one of those things that you want to be in a community of where it's always done like this, and it's like a signature that the doctor has, but that he or she has established. It's always done like this, and it always looks like this. And then you're like sisters and brothers in that, type of process or procedure. Even in the centuries that appear to us to be the most monstrous and foolish, the immortal appetite for beauty has always found satisfaction. Charles Baudelaire. So I guess what he's trying to say that there's always been a market, there's always been a place for beauty. Even in, that there's always been a place for it, no matter how monstrous, no matter how foolish things were, that beauty was always to be present. Beauty and media and self-expression have become a kind of ecosystem. Their singular influence in cosmetics is matched only by their dominance in philanthropy and the finely honed art of acquisition. Kevin Conley. This must be the quality that Estee Lauder, president and CEO, had in mind when he called Leonard and Frida Neapolitan accent his secret weapon in negotiations. Responds with his business principles or relates anecdotes from his travels, like the time he visited the Neiman Marcus in Houston's Post Oaks Mall and was surprised to find that the best-selling Estee Lauder foundation there, probably the whitest of all stores in America, was the same shade as the company's top seller in Africa, due to a rare combination of factors: a Nigerian oil boom and a new direct flight from Lagos that brought loads of eager shoppers straight from the plane. In 2014, he pledged his collection of Cubist masterpieces, valued at $1.1 billion, to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In his home or office, he likes to arrange works so the art of the pictures talk to each other because they feel comfortable in their environment. I do things today because I know they will increase family harmony today, he says. Taking the analogy a little further, one could argue that the company acquires beauty brands with similar curatorial skill, choosing little treasures of the luxury market that possess similar DNA, that talk to each other, and that the company then nurtures to market leadership. As president of Estee Lauder from 1972 to 1995, CEO from 1982 to 1999, and chairman until 2009, transformed the business from a private company built on his mother's charismatic personal approach. Her pre-social media motto was telephone, telegraph, telewoman, into a multinational public corporation, which had been his dream from the start. Clinique, which debuted in 1968, was followed by Prescriptives in 79 and Origins in 90, which led to a blitz of acquisitions: Mac, La Mer, Bobbi Brown, before the company went public in 1995. Founders tend to be satisfied with their deals, seem to prefer targeting brands that are either beating them in one category or that have pioneered a new strategy in the luxury market. They have steered clear of bigger and perhaps debt-ridden companies with entrenched identities. I'd rather buy a $1 million company and build it to $100 million than buy a $100 million company and hope to build it to $200 million. He said, "You know why your mother gives you such a hard time? Because you made her rich." And no matter how sound the company's expansive strategy may be, it's easy to see how thrilled he still is at going out and vetting potential acquisitions, a personal touch that has made his company one of the most desirable destinations for any startup in the beauty field, the Harvard of cosmetics if you're looking to be acquired. The French founder of the now Lauder-owned Le Labo, a boutique company specializing in personal accents, remembers first visit to his downtown Manhattan store. Beauty queens. For me, that was proof that he must be taking care of his own people. He brings up the habit, as every Lauder does, of talking about the business of beauty over family dinners. He's the one who pushed the company onto the internet. Mac and Clinique now lead the beauty industry in online sales, and he insisted on standalone stores, temples as he put it, where the consumer could see what the brand is about without any intervention from department stores. They are the sort of kin who rarely miss a birthday or graduation, vacation in Mass, sometimes in Estee's beloved Palm Beach, and gather on high holidays. When she wasn't revolutionizing the beauty industry, Estee was a fairly typical Jewish mother and grandmother with the emphasis on grand. She spotted me from her villa and was soon on the boat ramp in one of her exquisite dresses, calling, "Hey, come back in here," as her chauffeur kept the car idling. Estee would tell Ron and his wife, "Sleep late, have the morning to yourself, then bring home dressed head to toe in red, red ribbons, red turtleneck, red pants, red sneakers, and red socks." But didn't get what she got. Didn't get where she got, the only woman on Time's list of the 20 most influential business geniuses of the 20th century, by taking no for an answer. That evening would win a Rising Star Award from Fashion Group International for Erin, her luxury lifestyle brand, which includes beauty, fashion accessories, and home decor. Meanwhile, Jane, the little sister, used to boss around, is now the global president of Clinique. Ronald, the tallest of the Lauders at 6'4", left the day-to-day operations of the company during the Reagan administration when he assumed the position as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for NATO and European policy under Cathro Weinberger, a liberty he could take because his brother was so deeply involved in the business. As president of the World Jewish Congress, a position that's very like being the leader of the Jews in the diaspora, he says he lives on a plane. He thinks he was the only student in his class at the Bronx High School of Science to spend his junior year abroad in the south of France. He walked me through the Munch and Expressionism show before it opened, pointing out one painting by German expressionists that his parents had given him for his 20th birthday. A few days before that, nearly all the main elements of his professional life, business acumen, passion for art, advocacy for Jewish causes, came together in a scathing speech he gave in Zurich, condemning the Bern Museum for accepting the Hildebrand Gerlich collection. After concisely outlining the money trail that exposed the Swiss dealer as a middleman for sales of artworks looted by the Nazis, he painted the controversy in the clearest terms. Mahler on his own has created a series of Jewish schools in Eastern Europe, the aim being to recreate the vitality of Jewish life there. Couldn't afford it, number one, because these guys and others have driven the price up. But number two, that's not my passion. It's committed to the First Book, an initiative that has donated more than 135 million books to children in need, and Jane is on board of the Friends of the High Line. All of them actually contribute to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, the cause Evelyn, William, and Gary's mother famously led for so many years. Everywhere I went in the offices, I met people who had been with the company for 25, 35, or 45 years, and that commitment seems to be extending to newly acquired companies. So the only thing that I will probably say about that is that when you acquire companies, just have some character about it, because sometimes, what if that situation, that experience is to show us that you might acquire something that you know nothing about. And then that sets the stage for everything else you thought you acquired, when you should have just stayed with this one thing. Whereas you should just stay with Estee Lauder, but then you wanted to have MAC and Clinique and Bobbi Brown. When Estee Lauder may just be your thing, because that's one thing that you can get a little bit different than the other things. And that's when there becomes ownership issues, and then that's when people started moving in, and because they have to, because of security reasons, because of family reasons, because of blood reasons. And, it's not that it gets out of hand, but it has to have a hand about it where, someone gets it and that it's contributing and it's not harming, that's one thing about the public. You try to do something in someone else's name that's like your grandmother or something like that. But once something goes out to the public, you have to have that that character about you to just release things and not try to claim something that isn't yours to claim. Mary Kay Schilling, the very British chemistry of drives a gripping adaptation of John le Carre's The Night Manager. A devoted fan of the Bond films, I get excited even when I hear the theme song, was tickled that people consider him a worthy successor. That ramrod straight moral principle that is unassailable to the British, the decent, well-mannered, refined, humble citizen who, if pressed, would dig his heels in without complaint, is central to le Carre's character, says the actor. One of the things I loved about the book was how angry le Carre was, who would not star on House for another 10 years, tried to option the book. I didn't even understand what optioning was back then, but I knew it was something grown-ups did, he says. We learned that director Sidney Pollack already had the rights and would for another 20 years, at which point le Carre's sons grabbed them back. Though there are female love interests, it's the strange attraction between the two men and the chemistry between the actors that is the show's secret weapon. Wrote that give out an aura of complicity that extends beyond the rational into the homoerotic. Like when you're with that crazy person who says, "Oh no, we'll park right here by the fire hydrant." If you say, "I'm playing the worst man in the world, a sadist and a psychopath, and I like to base him on you," the conversation, funnily enough, doesn't go quite so well. They said if those people get wind of the fact that you are basing any aspect of his character on them, thought, speech, how he eats soup, we're opening a whole can of trouble. But Trump is a wholly separate phenomenon, particularly in his view of himself as a player, who has disliked adaptations of his work more often than he's liked them, was so charmed by that he wondered if perhaps, in contrast to the book, the character goes down winning. Without giving the ending away, if Roper has one redeeming quality and he doesn't have one, it will be that he gets the joke of his own wickedness. Night creams, silk pajamas, and fine linens will cost you, but who can put a price tag on beauty rest? Throwback 1993. 1993, I was 2 years away from graduating from high school. Throwback 1980. Take a cue from our Throwback 1980. The best source of calcium is milk. Throwback 1959. Margarine is healthier than butter. Maybe for some, maybe not for others. Before they were seal stars. Throwback 1910 by the experts of the Good Housekeeping Institute. Throwback 1947. Beat traffic. By the experts at the Good Housekeeping Institute. Throwback 1948. Throwback 1998. Throwback 1991. Throwback 1999. A brave teacher's quick thinking. Throwback 1962. Throwback 1922. Throwback 1974. Jennifer Parker, 45. I bet there are people in technology who do a year of service. I'm deeply proud that so many people have joined us in the belief that it's our problem to improve our cities and towns. Years after Code for America started, I was asked to be the United States Deputy Chief Officer. We're a bit of an anomaly in the tech industry, which tends to be male-dominated. Jessica Alba. That was when I began thinking about starting a company that would help families like ours do that. I faced a lot of hurdles to be successful. So when it came to creating a business, I remembered that. I'm not the best at business, and I'm not the best at design, product development, or marketing campaigns. The more I do, the better I become. We're trying to do the best we can to make a positive difference. Throwback 1960. Throwback 1941. Like, well, how can you have a throwback 1922, 1941 if you weren't even born then? You're a beauty bag. Double cleansing, said to be more thorough than a single wash, involves using an oil cleanser to remove makeup and grease, then a foaming or water-based formula to purify deeply. Beauty Lab Lowdown. Berry, the super hydrator. The fruit of this Amazonian palm, known to natives as the tree of life, is being touted as giving new life to dry hair and skin. Beauty Lab tip. Because Berretti is bright yellow orange in its pure form, its tint could potentially transfer to skin and hair. Hard sides protect everything inside, and the throwback shape adds a dose of glamour to any look. Throwback, 1962. April Franzino. You might have noticed new high-tech tools hitting beauty counters. These gadgets use sonic vibrations to massage your face, claiming to boost circulation and enhance glow. Some devices also promise to have skin treatments penetrate better, improving efficacy, but there isn't yet sufficient clinical data to prove it. The flaky, dry feeling left behind? Beauty Lab lowdown. Most formulas the GH Beauty Lab tried, whether from drugstores or department stores, didn't have the right concentration of oil to be true lip oils. Throwback, 1977. That was the year I was born. 1977. Throwback. Birthday gifts for you. It's our birthday and we can give away presents if we want to. 3 breakthrough new products in jewelry care. Lauren Oster. If you want your pot to be admired from a distance, your tallest plant should go toward the back, which gives you room in the front and sides for fluffy, showy species. If they are producing flowers or fruit, they have to be fed throughout the season. Spiky hedgehog cologne at center, jolly green aeoniums at sweet, sturdy clusters, and burrowed tail sedum morganiums, cascading stems, make for a sophisticated trio that thrives in arid weather. The biggest problem with succulents is rotting roots, so make sure you've got well-draining soil. None of these plants will look like they're on the brink of death if you miss watering for a day. Jessica Press. This event gives them pride because they know they can be themselves. We have adults up to 60 years old, some of whom have never been to a dance in their life, says Joe. Jennifer King Lindley. You're going to be found out as a fraud, says Young. That doesn't have to be the whole story, nor should it be, because putting ourselves out there is how we grow and achieve. One major factor, many women describe feeling pressure to be perfect, an impossible standard that can hold you back from taking a leap in the first place. Over time, we can internalize the belittling. Intellectually, we all know that nobody's life is amazing 100% of the time, but the result is that by comparison, our own lives start to feel pretty flawed. So women can be trapped in a vicious cycle. Heads or clients use self-affirmation to build an internal sense of their own worth. The irony of trying to boost your confidence and your willingness to take chances is that you have to take a risk to ever get yourself there. Let's say you try psyching yourself up, but you're still trembling at the prospect of asking for a long-deserved raise. Such small changes can add up to big ones, explains PhD, a professor at Harvard Business School, and the author of Presence, bringing your boldest self to your biggest challenges. All you need is that one moment to build from. Remind yourself others are more interested in the buffet nibbles than in what you are doing. Challenge your worried thoughts by taking stock of your strengths. The best targets for you to try talking to people standing alone or groups of 3 or more. As soon as the office bloviator comes up for air, start talking. Doing this can start a ripple effect, causing you to look and sound confident in other ways too, which in turn tricks your brain into thinking you're braver than you feel. That's because it is. Lauren Badowski. Lisa Lillian. Don't get me wrong, I love a turkey burger, but sometimes you just want the real deal, you know? But that's not all. When things seem out of control, you might think, why should I have to be in control? When things seem out of control, you might think, why should I have to be in control. A broad that puts in quadruple duty, the best 2 for 1. Dust bronzer below the chin. Summer beauty. Nicole Lapin. I take looking out for you ladies very seriously, but let's be honest, you know yourself best. In some cases, that's true, but no one else can or should be as invested in your financial health as you. Take care of these 3 simple things yourself, and you'll end up with more money in the bank, not to mention confidence and knowledge for the future. Otherwise, your combined rate could end up too high to be worth it. But they charge fees, and it's easy to do this yourself. But then, of course, they will charge you a fee for getting out of your coffee van, and those average $33. How to love the body you've got. 63 ideas for some blissful time off. The inside trick to bravery. 23 swimsuits for your body type. Be the best guest. You're invited. Here's your cheat sheet for winning at weddings, dominating at dinners, and best of all, always getting asked back to that one friend's sweet beach house. Offer to bring something. Destination, Kenya. The pieces will fall into place after Mars goes direct by the end of June. A girl is escaping August with the perfect way to rest and regroup for fall. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom. Why do guys wait forever to book travel? What's the best toy for avoiding an awkward airport security check? Cosmo throwback. Bring it at the beach. I feel a responsibility to be a voice for the beautiful shades my people come in. These zero effort beauty hacks will get you hot without the hassle. Lazy girl beauty staple. So my lazy girl beauty staple is water. I like to splash it on my face. So that's, my lazy girl beauty staple instead of, buying cleanser. And, I used to buy the splash from Origins. My lazy girl beauty staple is just water. Signature summer beauty look. My signature summer beauty look. I guess I go back to the person that had mentioned about the dark colors and the bright colors. I'll say my signature summer beauty look has been dark, wearing dark colors. Beauty tip. Jessica Magala. Mix 1 tablespoon chopped walnuts. Live beautifully. More than just another beauty fad, this hydrating and nutrient-packed superfruit is a hair and skin dream, and it smells amazing. Lauren Bazano. I've heard of people getting Botox to prevent sweating. Normal sweat from, say, a spinning session is made of mostly water, specifically 99% H2O, plus a small amount of dissolved salts and amino acids pumped out by the eccrine glands, which are spread out all over the body. But stress, like that brought on by a bad meeting with your boss, triggers a release of adrenaline, pushing sweat from your apocrine glands concentrated largely in your pits. These glands release stress sweat made of about 80% water and 20% lipids and proteins, nutrients for bacteria to feed on. However, they're often formulated with ingredients like baking soda, plant powders, essential oils, and clays that absorb sweat and reduce odor-causing bacteria. When is the best time to apply antiperspirant? Surprisingly, before bed. The aluminum salts, which plug the sweat glands, are best absorbed when your body is at its baseline temperature and less active. Sticks allow you to apply the product more evenly, leading to better application and performance. And some sunscreens, like Promise Organic or Body Scrubs, we heart herbivore botanicals, are formulated with coconut to boost moisture levels, creating a smoother, easier application as well as a buttery finish. Even more tropical treats storming the beauty scene this summer. Live beautifully. Discover the blend you need for the hair you love. Jessica Matlin. APEs are classified by the FDA as over-the-counter drugs due to their active ingredients, aluminum salts, which form temporary plugs that block sweat glands so moisture can't escape. It's stronger than basic antiperspirant. Beauty Boost, Beauty 411. Beauty breakthrough that actually works. Lauren Balsamo, Sexy Beauty, all month long. Bamboo, take two. Expect a brighter complexion and more shelf space with just one pump. We didn't break the mold. Mimic the patchwork look by wearing denim on denim with true blue accessories for a fresh take on a classic fabric. Low blow. You better fill up that water bottle, girl. That's the best fake notes I've ever seen. William Mosley, The Royals. The British are coming. Hashtag THX BIRTHCONTROL. Of 20 things, 23 things to do this month, get ghosted. But like in a good way, by the badass lady lineup of the epic Ghostbusters reboot. I don't think of myself as a celebrity. I feel a responsibility to be myself. So I'm going to hold up. If I can find it. First, I'm going to take like a 10-minute break. So I'm back, and gonna try to find this World War, not the World War Z, but the Art of War. And I can't find it. I don't remember what I saved it under. I have no idea, man, where it is. Because I did it live, and I decided that I wanted to have a record of it. You know, since it was this version and not, you know, so I decided to record it to document it. And I found when I documented it that there are some that was left out. Okay, here it is. So I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to try to remember what I left out. I don't think that I added this by attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army, by employing the officers of his army. So by attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army. For me, that's not quite clear. So you want to be clear, you know, when it comes to, you know, when you find yourself in this, and it's like, it's been a lot, like with Brad Pitt, like he was doing World War Z, War Machine, you know, it's like, it's all this stuff, and I found myself like going through, like with this sex offender, it's been going over 2 decades, and you stop and you ask yourself, you know, has someone attempted to, you know, wage a war against me, and I not even know that this is what was going on? You know, have I been fully protected in it? You know, what do I need to do to be more to have more defense? You know, the enemy is already defeated. That's already known. But you know, what else can we offer in terms of defense? So by attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administered the kingdom. So I don't, it might be saying that in an attempt to govern an army the same way as you administer a kingdom, that puts you in terms in an ignorant state of the conditions which obtain an army, so that you don't want to. So by knowing that attempting to do that will put you with ignorant in terms of an army, then that's not something that you want to do. You want to choose something different. You don't want to govern an army the same way as you administer a kingdom, to prevent that type of ignorance. By employing the officers of his army without discrimination, through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation or circumstances. So you want to get ignorance in a way that it's not something that you run away from, or it's them and not me. You want to get ignorance in a way where you can still be successful through it. You know, when you have different people that make up an audience, or when your audience stray, or when there's attempts to be in your audience that of which you haven't authorized, you know, and you want to be able to work through those things. You want to be able to work through ignorance without discriminating against it. That the impact of your army may be like a grindstone dashed against an egg. This is affected by the science of weak points and strong. So maybe what the idea is that the egg is the weak point when it's up against being dashed by a grindstone. So you want to grasp that impact, that when you're the egg and you're up against being dashed by a grindstone, you want to be able to comprehend that impact, you know, where you may not consider yourself weak, but up against something else, you know, general perspective may perceive this to be stronger than you. You know, you may be in the hospital, you know, in a hospital bed where you're perceived to be weak against somebody that calls themselves visiting you know, or an offender that's attempting to visit you. You know, there may be those that consider that offender to be stronger than you because you're the one in the bed, in the hospital bed, considered to be ill. So you want to get the impact of those type of situations and how to protect yourself in those situations. You know, ideally, you want to be protected from an offender, you know, but, you know, there's a situation that I got right now where there's, you know, someone that's like got that situation where they're in a hospital bed. They don't really have it's perceived as if they don't really have that control over who visits them or who is responsible for their care. And so that offender is appearing to be like the stronghold in the situation. So, you know, you want to get the impact when it comes to the sight of those, you know, around, or those, you know, that's in the medical field, or those who provide medical services. You want to get the impact that, you know, they're experiencing when they're not with that, when they don't agree with an offender, you know, trying to be a stronghold or trying to have, the upper hand. When they don't agree, you want to get the impact so you can, you know, be a part of that bouncing that offense back where you protect it and that enemy is defeated. So I may not share all of them that was omitted, but at least I get to most of them. There are 5 dangerous faults which may affect the general. 1, recklessness, which leads to destruction. 2, cowardice, which leads to capture. 3, a hasty temper, which can be provoked by insult. 4, a delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. 5, solicitude for his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. So, like for instance, I shared on my Facebook page, because we've taken an interest in the L word, of course. And the question was, who killed Jenny? So we had shared that we thought that Shane was the guilty party, but we most recently shared that the psychopath was Warren Ziskin, which was Jenny's stepfather. So when it comes to getting justice with regards to a psychopath, because you have the one, like you got a trigger man, then you got like the mastermind, so how do you bring justice? It's like, most times when a person running from the scene, that's the person that get caught, that's the person that goes to jail. Or the person that's at the scene, that's the person that gets caught, that's the person that goes to jail. But it just seems like it's been very rare in the justice system when there's been a psychopath that had a part in it to get justice to that person. It's like to that offender. It's like it seems like that offender can just keep on offending. And so 5 dangerous faults, recklessness, like how can we use these dangerous faults to capture, to get justice when it comes to a psychopath? Recklessness, which leads to destruction. Cowardice, because they're the psychopath. Sometimes they don't even admit, they can't even admit that they're psychopathic. It's always someone else and not them. Like it was Jenny and not him. A hasty temper, breaking into the room and seeing her, and you get out of my house. Just the point of them being in this room that she used to call hers, insulting him, finding her in there, with someone else. Well, he did not. He just felt as though it's his house. He can just come on in. A delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. The shame of, that can't be expressed. The shame of wanting to be present, in the midst of sexual intercourse of someone that's supposed to be like his daughter, wanting to see her involved in that type of act. The shame of that, not being able to express it, that shame. Recklessness, breaking and opening the door. Proof that, of being present in it, that thought existed in his psychopathic mind. Being able to identify those things in the offender to get to the justice of, serving the consequence to a Warren Zeskin. There are the 5 besetting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. So again, are those the 5 things that have to be considered when getting justice to a psychopath like Warren Zeskin versus, settling for, consequences, getting the consequences to shame? So that's it for that. So it's that, again, that cowardice, the coward not able to admit that, hiding behind, oh, I'm with her mother, not able to admit that he thought about her breasts and what her breasts would look like sexually, that he thought about her body in a way that was not befitting a stepfather. And the shame of that, going up against trying to be an honorable member of a family, and having to take a stand on those truths to get justice for her death. Because if she's dead, then all of that shame and all of that having to hide in this and being a coward, all of that goes away if she's dead. If Jenny is dead, all of that goes away. So now for John Legend. Who is John Legend? So I'm going to do one song where he's the solo artist, and then one song where still the focus is on him, but it's a duet. So I did this song before, but I mentioned that I did it with regards to that, the situation in my life, which is relative to the movie World War Z, which is relative to these 2 adopted kids. And I don't really want to go further into what occurred or what happened, but just that it's a character separation. And so it's that character separation that is being presented with the song. Oh, we'll see. I might just do it without the song, without the music. I just gotta get it in my head first. I gotta think about how it goes. Let's see. Yeah, I might just. the viewing of the movie, just the book. So I went through it, and this is the Late Late Show BT version. And I really want to know into after because I haven't read it. I just pulled out the Late Late Show BT's version, and so I won't really know if the book version is goes into those real life experiences that Meghan Trainor, that John Legend is got, in their public artistry. We survived the zombie apocalypse, but how many of us are still haunted by that terrible time? Prepare to be entranced by this addictively readable oral history of the Great War between humans and zombies. Entertainment Weekly, E.W. Pitt. Far more affecting than anything involving zombies really has any right to be. The book opens in blood and guts, turns the world into an oversized version of hell, then ends with an affirmation of humanity's ability to survive the worst the world has to offer. The Onion's AV Club. My travel stipend, this is an introduction. My travel stipend, my security access, my battery of translators, both human and electronic, as well as my small but nearly priceless voice-activated transcription pal, the greatest gift the world's slowest typist could ask for, all spoke to the respect and value my work was afforded on this project. The official report was a collection of cold, hard data, an objective, after-action report that would allow future generations to study the events of that apocalyptic decade without being influenced by the human factor. This is their book, not mine, and I have tried to maintain as invisible a presence as possible. Here we go. But the streets are clear of rubble, and the local security council has prevented any post-war outbreaks. Their former home, Old Duchesne, has stood since the period of the Three Kingdoms, farms and houses and even trees said to be centuries old. When the Three Gorges Dam was completed and reservoir waters began to rise, much of the chain had been disassembled, brick by brick, then rebuilt on higher ground. It must have been a heartbreaking irony for those poor peasants to see their town saved, but then chose to name their newly constructed hamlet New Duchesne to preserve some connection to their heritage, even if it was only a name. The younger doctors, the kids who think medicine is just a way to pad their bank accounts, they certainly weren't going to help some non men just for the sake of helping. I was in an impatient mood by the time I reached the small collection of hilltop homes. I asked the villagers who had been taking care of these people. Their behavior made me angry. Not at them, you understand, not as individuals, but what they represented about our country. There was a wound in her right forearm, a bite mark. The bite radius and teeth marks had to have come from a small or possibly young human being. Although I hypothesized this to be the source of the infection, the actual injury was surprisingly clean. I asked the villagers again, who had been taking care of these people. I knew this could not be true. The human mouth is packed with bacteria, even more so than the most unhygienic dog. If no one had cleaned this woman's wound, why wasn't it throbbing with infection? I found patient zero behind the locked door of an abandoned house across town. Although he'd rubbed off the skin around his bonds, there was no blood. There was also no blood on his other wounds, not on the gored gouges on his arm. So I'm like, is that supposed to say bonds? Although he'd rubbed off the skin around his bonds, was it supposed to be hands? There was no blood. There was also no blood on his other wounds, not on the gouges on his legs or arms, or from the large dry gap where his right big toe had been. At first, the villagers tried to hold me back. They warned me not to touch him, that he was cursed. The boy's skin was as cold and gray as the cement on which he lay. They remained locked on me like a predatory beast. Throughout the examination, he was inexplicably hostile, reaching for me with his bound hands and snapping at me through his gag. One held the boy's feet while the other grasped his hands. As I was withdrawing the needle, the boy began another bout of violent struggling. One of my orderlies, the one responsible for his arms, gave up trying to hold them and thought it might safer if he just braced him against the floor with his knees. But the boy jerked again, and I held his left arm snap. And I heard his left arm snap. Although the boy didn't cry out, didn't even seem to notice, it was enough for both assistants to leap back and run from the room. The boy began to twist in my direction. His arm ripped completely free. My voice still cracked as I asked the villagers how the boy had been infected. I began to hear banging on the door, the boy's fist pounding weakly against the thin wood. She admitted that it had happened when the boy and his father were moon fishing, a term that describes diving for treasure among the sunken ruins of Three Gorges Reservoir. She finally explained that the boy came up crying with a bite mark on his foot. He didn't know what had happened. The water had been too dark and muddy. I told him everything: the bites, the fever, the boy, the arm. His face suddenly stiffened. I did so, and when I brought the screen back to my face, I saw that his video image had been cut. He told me he would get back to me. All business again. With their bullying swagger, their intimidating arrogance, even these backwater bumpkins could recognize the Gwanbu, Woko Agwanbu, the pre-war Ministry of State Security. Next, they went for the boy. Their names were taken, their blood drawn. One by one, they were stripped and photographed. The last one to be exposed was a withered old man, a withered old woman, that is. I've never been a superstitious person, and I've never allowed myself to be hooked on the opiate of these people. Of the people. He'd even risked his neck to warm me, to give me enough time to call and maybe alert a few others before the Ministry of Health arrived. Goo and I had been trying to remove shrapnel from the belly of the soldier not much younger than us. The boy's lower intestines had been torn open. His blood and excrement were all over our gowns. Every 7 seconds, a round would land close by, and we would have to bend over his body to shield the wound from falling earth. And every time, we would be close enough to hear him whimper softly for his mother. There were other voices too, rising from the pitch darkness just beyond the entrance to our bunker. Desperate, angry voices. That weren't voices that weren't supposed to be on our side of the river. We had 2 infantrymen stationed at the bunker's entrance. He looked at the patient, then at the doorway, then at me, and suddenly he said, "Don't worry, everything is going to be all right." If he had a headache, it was a brain tumor. If it looked like rain, this year's harvest is ruined. Now, when reality looked more dire than any of his fatalistic predictions, he had no choice but to turn tail and charge in the opposite direction. "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right." "No," I said. "Why should I be?" There was a brief silence. I'm sure other ears were listening. "Don't worry," he said. "Everything's going to be all right." The last thing I managed to say to her was, "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right." Kwang Jingzhu was arrested by the MSS and incarcerated without formal charges. By the time he escaped, the outbreak had spread beyond China's borders. Before the outbreak started, overland smuggling was never popular. Back then, the only 2 lucrative routes were into Thailand or Myanmar. These were still good times for China, where the best way to honor Chairman Mao's memory was to see his face on as many hundred yuan notes as possible. Kashi was a boom town. I'd always wanted to break into air transport. He had been bitten. Apparently, they reached their hotel room in Paris just as he began to collapse. He stated in a call for a doctor that they were afraid they'd be sent back, but then why try to find a cure in the West? They were trapped between their infections and being rounded up and treated by their own government. Wouldn't you want to believe there was hope? It has always been this way, even before the outbreaks. Many of the poorer ones had to work off their bao, the debt many refugees incurred during their exodus to the local Chinese mafia. Restrictions were tightened, but only in certain countries. Airlines Qatar were careful, but they were also resourceful. They practically begged us for the business. Not in the beginning. The blight worked too fast. It might take weeks to reach Kashi. And even the slowest of burns, I've been somewhere on the road where they would be recognized and collected by the local police. Later, as the infestations multiplied and the police became overwhelmed, I began to see a lot of infected on my route. Their family usually had them bound and gagged. You'd see something moving in the back of a car, swarming softly in the clothing or heavy blankets. By then, yes, but I knew trying to explain it to them would be a hopeless cause. Sometimes ships would pull up to a stretch of deserted coast. It didn't matter if it was the intended country. It could have been any coast, and unload the infected Rinche onto the beach. The driver's eyes had a different look, the same one as me, the look that maybe money wasn't going to be much good for much longer. A veteran of almost every campaign across the expanse of his native Canada, he first encountered the living dead during a different war, when the 3rd Battalion of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry was involved in drug interdiction operations in Kyrgyzstan. This is long before their deployment, before the panic, before the Israeli self-quarantine. This was even before the first major public outbreak in Cape Town. This was just at the beginning of the spread, before anybody knew anything about what was coming. There is plenty of blood and bits of brown rotting flesh, but the only corpses we found were the pack mules. They'd been brought down, not shot, by what looked like wild animals. Their bellies were torn out and large bite wounds covered their flesh. We guessed it had to be wild dogs. The blood trail led up the mountain path from the massacre in the wadi. He hadn't been treated. Somehow, without suffocating, without bleeding to death, he lain there for some time, then just gotten up again and started walking. Immediately, we began to see bodies, men killed by their own booby traps. They looked like they'd been running to get out. Beyond them in the first chamber, we saw first evidence of a one-sided firefight. One-sided because only one wall of the cabin was pockmarked by small arms. They'd been torn apart. I found it across the room along with the body of another unarmed man who'd been hit over 100 times. You could see by the blood trails, the footprints, the shell casing, the pockmarks that the entire body had originated from the infirmary. I pulled back, tried to get away. I fell back, the top half coming with me. The waist down was still jammed under the rock, still connected to the upper torso by a line of entrails. The burst was angled upward, connecting just under and behind the chin and spraying its brains across the ceiling above us. I'd been the only one in the tunnel when it happened. Yes, I was rich and getting richer all the time, but at least my success came from performing necessary medical procedures because the fight had already taken so long. As I lay in the recovery room barely minutes after closing, his symptoms began to appear. It was a 30-minute drive back to the clinic, and I cursed both Silva and myself every second of the way. So I did have reason to be concerned. Ego, you could say, even though to be right meant dire consequences for me as well. I still relished tarnishing the invincible Silva's reputation. She explained that they had been trying to revive him when Herb Mueller had opened his eyes and bitten Dr. Silva on the hand. The two of them struggled. Rossi tried to help, but was almost bitten herself. Maybe he just risen from the bed and in a stupor had tried to grab onto Dr. Silva to steady himself. There had to be a reasonable explanation. And yet, there was the blood on her uniform and the muffled noise from Herb Mueller's room. I went back to the car for my gun, more so to calm Graziella and Rossi than for myself. I went back to Herb Mueller's room. I knocked several times. Silva was lying in the far corner, Mueller crouching over him with his fat, pale, hairy back to me. I never fired it before, thank God. The round went wild, literally blowing his head off. I don't know if Fran Mueller ever believed that story or if she ever tried to investigate further, because the infection started in the heart. The virus access to his circulatory system, so it probably reached his brain seconds after it was implanted. Doesn't have to be fully reanimated. You put that organ in another body, it might take days, weeks before it eventually works its way out into the bloodstream. By that point, the patient might be well on the way to recovery, happy and healthy and living a regular life. Years before the outbreak, they've been making millions on organs from executed political prisoners. China used to be the largest exporter of human organs on the world market. You want to talk about the donated eggs from political prisoners, the sperm, the blood? Can you explain all those stories of people suddenly dying of unexplained causes, then reanimating without ever having been bitten? No, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. By the time I realized the danger, it was scratching at my front door. Bridgetown Harbor, Barbados, West Indies Federation. He didn't understand that these were long-term goals to be achieved after years, generations of hard work. The night it happened, I was walking home from the bus stop. This was lasting much too long to be just an ordinary gangrel. I began to smell smoke. I was trapped. I couldn't breathe. Instinctively, I began to withdraw back into the doorway of the closet shack. A knife protruded from his chest, jammed between his ribs, and buried to the hilt. I kicked the back wall open, slinking out and bringing the whole hut down in the process. I saw a bright light up ahead, shining between the cracks in the shanties. I was out of breath. I saw the man in the bed next to me frantically wheeled out as soon as his breathing stopped. I don't claim to be any smarter or better than them. I guess what it really comes down to is the randomness of birth. I happened to be born into a group of people who live in constant fear of extinction. The text itself, it all had to do with the new viral outbreak that first eliminated his victim, then reanimated his corpse into some kind of homicidal berserker. That was pretty standard procedure going back to the first days of human communication. It had to be a new weapon system or ultra-secret war plan. The man went on blathering about how these golems weren't made from clay, nor were they docile and obedient. He hadn't seen any of these cases firsthand, but the staff had told him enough stories to fill my old dictaphone. And this is where I directly benefited from the unique circumstances of my precarious security. In October 1973, when the Arab sneak attack almost drove us into the Mediterranean, we had all the intelligence in front of us, all the warning signs, and we had simply dropped the ball. But behind that group is a mirror whose image shows the writing's true message. If a neighbor's nuclear power plant might be used to make weapons grade plutonium, you dig. If a dictator was rumored to be building a cannon so big it could fire anthrax shells across whole countries, you dig. And if there was even the slightest chance that dead bodies were being reanimated as ravenous killing machines, you dig and dig until you strike the absolute truth. I found the blog records of a Brazilian nurse who told her friends all about the murder of a heart surgeon going for the brain. We talk about it today as if it is some feat of magic like holy water or a silver bullet, but why wouldn't destruction of the brain be the only way to annihilate these creatures? Just a brain kept alive by a complex and vulnerable machine we call the body? The brain cannot survive if just one part of the machine is destroyed or even deprived of such necessities as food or oxygen. Paul Knight had been a friend of mine for a long time, going all the way back to Entebbe. When I visited him at his home, I was shocked to find that not only had he been working on the very same project on his own time, of course, but that his file was almost as thick and heavy as mine. We finished almost at the same time, just as the sky began to lighten in the east. My family was one of the few lucky ones not to be expelled after 1991, after Arafat sided with Saddam against the world. I watched the Al Jazeera broadcast from behind the counter at the Starbucks where I worked every day after school. Was I supposed to really believe his crazy story that African rabies was actually some new plague that transformed dead bodies into bloodthirsty cannibals? How can you possibly believe that kind of foolishness, especially when it comes from your most hated enemy? I had never been to Israel, or was about to be absorbed into the new state of unified Palestine. What do you think was behind the Israeli ruse? They know that the next and final blow will destroy that illegal atrocity they call a country, and to prepare for that final blow, their attempts to recruit both foreign Jews as cannon fodder and I thought I was so clever for figuring this part out, kidnapping as many Palestinians as they could to act as human shields. The TV was blaring in the background, riot police storming the front entrance of a house. The official report blamed the violence on pro-Western extremists. He tried to convince me of what he'd seen in the hospital, that by the time our leaders acknowledged the danger, it would be too late for any of us. What else could I expect from a man who spent his whole life scrubbing toilets in a country that treated our people only slightly better than his Filipino guest workers? My father tried with all the patience he could muster to make me see that he had no more love for Israel than the most militant Al-Aqsa's Mater, but they seemed to be the only country actively preparing for the coming storm, certainly the only one that would so freely shelter and protect our family. Then I dropped the bomb. I told him that I'd already found a website for the children of Yasin and was waiting for an email from a recruiter supposedly operating right in Kuwait City. I told my father to go and be the Yehud's whore if he wanted, but the next time we'd meet was when I would be rescuing him from an internment camp. I glared in his face, stood from the table, my final pronouncement, surely the vilest of beasts in Allah's sight are those who disbelieve. The dinner table suddenly became very silent. By that time, I think I was even bigger than him. Some martyr I turned out to be. I think I cried all the way to Cairo. As we approached the border, I saw the wall for the first time. I had known about the infamous security fence, what citizens in the Arab world didn't. But I'd always been led to believe that it only surrounded the West Bank and Gaza Strip. At Taba, we were taken off the bus and told to walk, single file, past cages that held very large and fierce-looking dogs, weeding out the ones too sick and old to be of any use to them. I turned to look at him and was surprised to see a white man. American, maybe, or Canadian. No, he had to be American. His English was too loud. He was well dressed, a suit and tie, matching luggage that was tossed aside as he began to fight with the Israelis. He was still kicking and screaming as they dragged him into the back of the van. That made the most sense to me, and it continued to be my theory during our internment outside Yorham. I couldn't bring myself to believe him, even though a growing part of me wanted to. You know, the whole time they barely even glanced at our passports. This is too good to be true, I thought as we boarded the bus for Tel Aviv. I jerked away as I felt the bus swerve out of control. My heart felt like it was going to burst. Suddenly, a door at the back of the Starbucks swung open. The soldier turned in its direction and fired. The soldier grabbed the bomb and tried to hurl it into the street. His body shielded us from the blast. He tumbled back over the corpse of my slain Arab brother. As my tears dried, I noticed that he wore a payas and a yarmulke and bloody tzitzit snaked out from his damp, shredded trousers. The battle raging all around us wasn't an uprising by Palestinian insurgents, but the opening shots of the Israeli civil war. They not only evacuated the city, but the entire Nablus to Hebron corridor as well. They believed that rebuilding a shorter wall along the 1967 demarcation line was the only way to ensure physical security, no matter what backlash might occur from their own religious right. I learned all this much later, you understand, as well as the fact that the only reason the IDF eventually triumphed was orthodox, and therefore most had never served in the armed forces. Everything I thought was true went up in smoke that day, supplanted by the face of our real enemy. I was running with my family into the back of an Israeli tank when one of those unmarked vans came around the corner. Figures were climbing out of the burning wreckage, slow-moving torches whose clothes and skin were covered in burning petrol. Suddenly I understood what my father had been trying to warn me about, what the Israelis had been trying to warn the rest of the world about. The office of the director of the Central Intelligence Agency could belong to a business executive or doctor or an everyday small town high school principal. This is the image most people had of us before the war, and it's an image we were more than happy to encourage. We wanted bad guys to suspect us, to fear us, and maybe think twice before trying to harm any of our citizens. How come all those people were murdered by that fanatic? How come when the dead began coming back to life, we didn't know about it until they were breaking through our living room windows? Even during the blank check days of the Cold War, it's just not physically possible to have eyes and ears in every back room, cave, alley, brothel, bunker, office, home, car, and rice paddy across the entire planet. But if you add up all the crackpot conspiracy theories from Pearl Harbor to the day before the Great Panic, then you have an organization not only more powerful than the United States, but the united efforts of the entire human race. If your Soviet neighbor is trying to set fire to your house, you can't be worrying about the Arab down the block. They realized that the best way to mask what they were doing was to hide it in plain sight. Bigger. The whole Taiwan Strait incident, the victory of the Taiwan National Independence Party, the assassination of the PRC defense minister, the build-up, the war threats, the demonstrations, and subsequent crackdowns were all engineered by the Ministry of State Security, and all of it was to divert the world's eye from a real danger growing within China. In fact, it worked so well, we were so convinced that World War III was about to break out on the Taiwan Strait that we diverted other intel assets from countries where undead outbreaks were just starting to unfold. And we were that bad. No, I mean the purges, because that's what they were. The last rush ride was a debacle, and guess who took the fall? Why stick around and be the victim of a political witch hunt when you could escape to the private sector, a better paycheck, decent hours, and maybe, just maybe, a little respect and appreciation by the people you work for? But that couldn't have been everyone. We weren't in this for money or working conditions or even the occasional pat on the back. But I can say that I broached the subject a number of times to my coworkers. Sure, now, but back then, the copy that was originally hand-delivered by Paul Knight himself, the one marked eyes only for the director, it was found at the bottom of the desk of a clerk in the San Antonio field office of the FBI 3 years after the Great Panic. It turned out to be academic because right after I was transferred, Israel went public with a statement of voluntary quarantine. The facts were out. It was now a question of who would believe them. As the weather warms and the bodies of frozen zombies begin to reanimate, elements of the UN N-4 Northern Force have arrived for their annual sweep and clear. At current trends, this area is expected to be completely secure within a decade. I'll be the first one to admit that we let the American people down. After all, if the rest of the world wasn't ready to believe something so outrageous, why should the men and women in this room? It was like a dam breaking. The taboo was shattered, and the truth just started flooding out. For months before the Israeli declaration, so had the chairman. We outlined a fully comprehensive program, not only to eliminate the threat within the United States, but to roll back and contain it throughout the entire world. Nothing with phase one, but the Alpha teams were only supposed to be a stopgap measure. Their measure was never to extinguish the threat. only delay it long enough to buy time for phase two. That kind of effort requires Herculean amounts of both national treasure and national support, both of which, by that point, were non-existent. The American people had just been through a very long and bloody conflict. We liked the big win, the touchdown, the knockout in the first round. If not, well, look at where we were before the panic. We didn't lose the last brushfire conflict, far from it. We won. But the public didn't see it that way because it wasn't the blitzkrieg smackdown that our national spirit demanded. Too much time had gone by. Too much money had been spent. Too many lives had been lost or irrevocably damaged. As if the traditional horrors weren't bad enough, the dead, the disfigured, the psychologically destroyed. Now you had a whole breed of difficulties. The betrayed. How many came back to ruined lives, or worse, didn't come back at all? This generation had enough. And that's why when the undead began to devour our country, we were almost too weak and vulnerable to stop them. I'm not blaming the civilian leadership, and I'm not suggesting that we in uniform should be anything but beholden to them. This is our system, and it's the best in the world. This extreme cold and the fact that overland transport takes over a month to reach the station were what made Vostok so attractive to Breckinridge, Breck Scott. That blew me away. God bless the news. We had plenty of contacts in the biomed industry, with plenty more up on the hill in Penn Ave. By the 18th hole, it was handshakes all around. Back then, the FDA was one of the most underfunded, mismanaged organizations in the country. J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller were getting wood from beyond the grave for this guy in the White House. His staff didn't even bother to read our cost assessment report. Remember the speech the press made before Congress, how it had been tested in Europe for some time, and the only thing holding it up was our own bloated bureaucracy? Remember the whole thing about people don't need big government, they need big protection, they need it big time? But the damage. You know how many disease scares there used to be? We said it had been tested in Europe, and the drugs it was based on had been tested in Europe. Who was going to blow the whistle? Everyone got to be heroes. Everyone got to make money. But the virus wasn't airborne. Now, I understand why it used to be illegal to shout fire in a crowded theater. Things got so good. I started setting up these dummy companies, with plans to build manufacturing facilities all over the country. Remember when we started to get our first cases here in the States? That guy in Florida who said he'd been bitten but survived because he was taking Phalanx? God freaking bless that dumbass, whoever he was. But that wasn't because of Phalanx. Hell, because of Phalanx, the biomed sector started to recover, which in turn jump-started the stock market, which then gave the impression of a recovery, which then restored consumer confidence to stimulate an actual recovery. That's the alpha cunt who should be shot. What's her name? Who first broke the story? Shit, you want to blame someone? Why not start with all the sheep who forked over their greenbacks without bothering to do a little responsible research? They're the bad guys, not me. We waited 3 months before the Israelis went public. Before the Pentagon started making noise, it was my job to personally brief the president, who in turn even devoted an entire meeting to discussing its message. Given how low a priority the National Security Advisor thought this was, I think we actually gave it some pretty healthy table time. Do you want me to be the man who tells the American people that he's diverting funds from either one of those for some new disease that most people haven't heard of? Can you imagine all those wet pants senators who would have brought the government to a standstill so they could railroad some high-profile and ultimately useless Zombie Protection Act through Congress? We were the cleanup crew, the unlucky bastards who had to mop up all the shit left by the last administration. And believe me, the previous 8 years have piled up one tall mountain of shit. They thought they'd been through some pretty tough times already, and it would have been political suicide to tell them that the toughest ones were actually up ahead. But there were alternative media outlets. Given that at any time government always has a lot on its plate, a lot of its plate, and especially at this time because another public scale was the last thing the American people wanted. So you figured that the threat was small enough to be managed by both the alpha teams abroad and some additional law enforcement training at home. But then that first winter thing died down, remember? And anyway, it was a lot more fun to rehash last night's episode of Celebrity Fat Camp or totally bitch out whoever was in the break room at that moment. I'm sorry to use that term, but that was how I thought back then. That was who I was. No, But the kids did, not verbally or consciously, I think. The only thing that pissed me off was that our insurance didn't cover it because the kids were already on phalanx. He was looking past me at the glass sliding door that led to the backyard. It smelled like the beach, like rotten kelpers in salt water. Tim looked frantically around the room for a weapon just as they grabbed him by the shirt. He shouted for us to get in the bedroom, for me to get the gun. The window was broken. It had Jenna by the hair. When I tried to remember, everything goes by too fast. I had it by the neck. He ran into the backyard as we headed for the garage. It stretched to the horizon. Sedans, trucks, buses, RVs, anything that could drive. They must have been looking to trade. Probably gas. People were flashing their lights, bumping the cars in front of them, getting out and throwing down. I saw a few people lying by the side of the road, barely moving, or not at all. The dead couldn't get in, but the living could get out. I tried to imagine what it must have been like, stuck bumper to bumper, crying kids, barking dogs, knowing what was coming just a few miles back and hoping, praying that someone up ahead knows where he's going. Sure enough, someone got in line behind them, then a couple more, and before you knew it, they were backed up around the block. They tell me what happened here was not usual. All around, one world where the ocean meets the land, people trying desperately to board whatever floated for a chance of survival at sea. Before the war, it was the largest breakage yard in the world. I thought my only hope was the half dozen new arrivals that still remained anchored offshore, the ones with skeleton crews, and I hoped a little bit of fuel left in their bunkers. When the dam was beginning to pull, I heard this horrible groan, this creaking screech of metal. The two literally split in two, the bow remaining on shore while the stern was pulled out to sea. Their cries were muffled by the thunder of escaping air. Why didn't the refugees just wait aboard the beach ships, pull up the ladders, make them inaccessible? Can you believe that? When you think about what they were risking, being murdered for their boats or just marooned on the beach or else attacked from beneath by so many underwater gals, you saw many swimmers suddenly vanish below the surface or boats capsized with their passengers dragged under. By the time I reached my intended salvation, there wasn't enough air in my lungs to call for help. I banged on the steel, shouting up the last bit of breath I had. Just as I slipped below the surface, I felt a powerful arm wrap around my chest. Some of the on-board infected refugees had begun to reanimate. Many who sank beneath the surface never reappeared. Sharon could be considered beautiful by almost any standard, with long red hair, sparkling green eyes, and the body of a dancer or a pre-war supermodel. Clearly, by their discomfort, Summers and Kellner agreed. Then follows up by pounding her right fist on the table. Brace the door! Sharon's voice suddenly simulates the sound of something large breaking, a deep phlegm-filled rumble from the bottom of her throat. She gets up from the table, mimicking a motion close to a football. The room is bare except for a table, two chairs, and a large wall mirror, which is almost sure to be one-way glass. Technically, we were alone, although I sensed watching eyes behind the room's one-way glass. About a month before it began, about the same time as that American newswoman broke the story, our camp was placed on a definite communication blackout. I was supposed to use it to call them my birthday, my first birthday away from home. Our official duty was peacekeeping, preventing ethnic strife between the Ossetia and English minorities. He was a mean little bastard with a thin red face, but there also wasn't time for any serious complaints. Right after the blackout was put into effect, we were placed on full combat alert. Up until then, it had been easy duty, lazy, monotonous, and broken only by the occasional mountain stroll. There were a lot of physical inspections, too, stripping these people to their bare skin while the medics searched every inch of their bodies for something. We weren't told what. We once found a whole cache of weapons, 74s, a few older 47s, plenty of ammo, probably bought from some corrupt opportunists right in our battalion. We didn't know who the weapons belonged to. Drug runners or local gangsters, maybe even those supposed reprisal squads that were the reason for our deployment in the first place. He was a skinny little runt, not the bravest or the strongest, but suddenly he lowered his weapon and said he wouldn't do it. Redface pulled a pistol from underneath his coat, shot her right between the eyes, then turned around and sauntered back toward us. I knew I should have felt bad for the child, angry, even vengeful toward Redface, and maybe even a little bit guilty because I didn't lift a finger to stop it. What if there had been some horrible terrorist attack? That's why I missed the patrol that day. That's why I was still in bed dress when they came back the following afternoon. It looked like an old woman, but there was a burlap hood over her head and a chain leash wrapped around her neck. What if they're back home with our families right now? He shook it at the sky, screaming as the veins in his neck began to bulge. Others in the crowd began to pick it up. I don't remember when the Spetsnaz commandos appeared, but suddenly they were all around us, beating us down, shackling us together. One of them stepping on my chest so hard I thought I was going to die right then and there. No, that was the beginning. It actually started about the time the MPs first closed down the base. Our new commanding officer gave a speech about duty and responsibility, about our sworn oath to protect the motherland, and how we had betrayed that oath with our selfish treachery and individual cowardice. I never heard words like that before. That was what you'd hear from old, great patriotic war veterans, the kind of broken, demented geezers who used to besiege Red Square with their tattered Soviet banners and their rows and rows of medals pinned to their faded, moth-eaten uniforms. We would be the ones to decide who would be punished. Broken up into groups of 10, we would have to vote on which one of us was going to be executed. And then we, the soldiers, we would be the ones to personally murder our friends. Some, like Barberin, simply knelt there soundly on this knees, staring right into my face as I brought the rock down into his. We all made a conscious choice, and because that choice carried such a high price, I don't think anyone ever wanted to make another one again. Bridgetown, Barbados, West Indies Federation. Travis Barr personifies the Wild West Indies, or more specifically, each island's special economic zone. It is not meant to be. The giant Texan slides a shot of Kill Devil rum in my direction, then swings his massive boot-clad feet onto the table. Yeah, I was a vet, and yeah, I used my training for cash. Funny thing about the Army, they always promise to teach you marketable skills, but they never mention that by far there's nothing more marketable than knowing how to kill some people while keeping others from being killed. Most importantly, I work for a company no different from any other before the war. I could have worked overseas. Lord knows there was plenty of demand. But after seeing what my buddies went through in the last brush fire, I said, screw it. Let me guard some fat CEO or dumb celebrity. There was that record mobile guy with the big old diamond earrings. He was snorting blow between the airbags of this teeny Thai stripper while spooning about how what was happening wasn't just about the living versus the dead. It was in shockwaves through every facet of our society, social, economic, political, even environmental. Crazy, I know, but you kind of expected those people to be there. At least I did. Some of them, I think, were pretty cool, just doing it for the money or because they figured they'd be safe there. Not only did you have a webcam in almost every room, but there was all the usual press you'd find on the Oscars red carpet. He had a hockey stick in his hand, a big old meat cleaver bolted to the blade. The camera saw the whole thing, the rotted arm that shot out of the sewer drain right in his face, then being dragged screaming by his ponytail into the drain. His stories about growing up in Russia convinced me that not all third world cesspools had to be tropical. It was when the camera was catching the reactions of beautiful people that he mumbled something to himself in Russian. I remember our boss's friends were all raiding the armory, racing around like extras in an 80s action flick by the time I made the third floor guest room window. They were booking it for the front gate, big tough steel that was supposed to stop 1,000 gals. Fire, the boss was screaming into the radio. So I'm going to take a break here. And we're in the book World War Z by Max Brooks. So we're stopping with fire. The boss was screaming into the radio. So I don't think I'm gonna get to, feel rushed. So I don't think I'm gonna get to the end in 15 minutes. The time that we have left. So I'm just gonna stop there. So again, the book is The Late Late Show with BT's version of World War Z by Max Brooks. So again, the book is a little different than the movie. Like, I was getting, even though I wasn't reading it when I started extracting our version, it was still clear that the movie was not really, that it was on a different, it was handling a different topic than the book. So that's that. One movie that's out is Kidnapped by Halle Berry, which came out, I think, August the 4th, I believe. So I'm a supporter of the Bird Theater, even though it went from being, I like when it was like the penny theater where it was $1.99 and most people would give $2 and they get a penny back. So it's like a penny theater. They keep the pennies out there for you to get your penny change. So I really like when it was that, but recently, to help them with remodeling and maintenance, renovations, they've increased it where it's $4 now. And on the weekend, I think it's just on the weekend. It could be Fridays and Saturdays, or it could be Saturdays and Sundays. I don't know the exact days, but they have an organ player that plays before the movie. And now, whereas first when it was the penny theater, is what I call it, they weren't accepting, it was just cash only. So now they accept credit cards for concession and tickets. So I like that movie theater. I like Destination Theater, which is linked to a church. So it's they do their theater in terms of a ministry. So those are two that I like. And then I support the regular movies when they do their summer movie film festivals. So I do support them then. I very rarely go and do like regular price, even though I'm excited about Kidnap because I think that Halle Berry is touching on a topic that's dear to us. So I would like to see how it plays out. I caught the trailer, so I mentioned that Ban Ki-moon is working off the clock. Even though there's a new Secretary General, that there were some changes that occurred. I noticed when he left, and I think that I feel, or maybe it's just me hoping that he is, found that people like us who are for the United Nations and we're not getting paid for it, that that it puts him with the likes of us. That, not saying that it will always be that way, but that's just how it is right now. So, I'm excited about the movie, and the only thing is, I kind of just want to go to, he's like, I'm not gonna say I'm stuck on it or I have favoritism, but I do have a preference right now, and that's Destination and The Bird. So I don't know how long it's going to take to get there because it has to do with rent in the regular theaters first. But that's one thing, you don't have to be like me and wait for, your preference of a theater. You may prefer dinner theater where they serve beer and pizza in addition to popcorn. You may prefer to wait until your movie gets there and look at it in that environment. So I'm not necessarily encouraging you to do that, but you definitely want to be in an environment when I think that's conducive to who you are, and with your beliefs when something comes out. And so, unfortunately, because of that, I'm waiting until it hits, one of these theaters, and then like you still don't never know because I don't check every day, or I don't get like like, oh, when this movie's, like email me. I'm not on like an email list for a particular movie presence. So, but that's how it is. That's one of the movies that's on my list right now. I tried to look at The Boss Baby yesterday and it wouldn't play, which I was very disappointed about because it was getting very interesting when, they were getting the tape back from Templeton. Um, and so it was like Templeton was the bad guy, but tried to make the Boss Baby look like he was a bad guy, and but they turned Templeton as the bad guy. And it wasn't at the point while I was watching it where, Templeton stopped being the bad guy. So I was like, darn. I still haven't seen Smurfs to Lost Village yet. So that's on my list. Um, so I was thinking, now that I'm in school, to do shows on Saturdays, since that's the only day that we really have. Um, so I don't know how that's gonna work out. It worked out this Saturday because I wanted to put out World War Z, but we didn't get to finish it. So I'll continue the next time we do the show, which may be next Saturday. Um, so I officially claimed Mass Comm as a major, and using the show as like the project, you know. So we'll just see what happens, and I believe in that union is where I'm supposed to be, but I'm still taking it one moment at a time because there's still financial questions, and that hasn't gone away. I feel like there's something else that needs to be said. Um, but I think this has been a good show. I like doing parents. I like sharing things from parents. Especially since my mom, my dad, they didn't marry, but they still produced the quality of me. And I think that is, there's something to gather from that. There's something to get from that. You know, um, when it comes to the perception of parents always being married and, um, like the child being dysfunctional or torn apart when they're not married. And I understand, I get that complexity, because it's like two halves of you that's supposed to be together for you to be together, mentally, emotionally, and physically. When those two halves are not together, it that perception that it makes you vulnerable to being dysfunctional or to being not together yourself. And when it comes to parents, I just learned that there's a lot of different ways of parenting, and there's a lot of different ways to view your parents. And there's a lot of different ways that parents can stay together as a unit without having to be made to be a couple. That they can still have that togetherness, they can still have that functionality without being disrespectful to who they are, to who they have as a couple, but it still have to honor that. And maybe that's what it is I like about parents, they still have to honor that and balance that. Because then you have parents when it comes to business, and you have like a parent company and all these subsidiaries, and understanding like who you are when it comes to that. And sometimes learning that, and understanding that people are businesses, but sometimes people, parents have to go into that type of format to embrace functionality and to have functionality for the betterment of their children. So, that's another reason why I like, that parents, because there's so many different, and it's not necessarily, blended families. That misperception of blended families sometimes just doesn't work. Sometimes it's just about just honoring, mother and father, like it is in the Bible, and understanding that and relating it and connecting it to, community, connecting it to, business, um, you know, there's a business when it comes to parents. There's a business when it comes to, like, in the Boss Baby that they were trying to get to, when it comes to having products for a baby community or for a parent community. There's, um, how do you balance that when it's family? And so don't mix family with business. But what if, how are you going to get baby clothes? How are you going to get baby milk? Or how are you going to get the bottles for baby milk? You can breastfeed. Why are you going to get the bottles for this? And how are you going to get clothes and feed and a diaper and pamper? So there has to be a balance. So this has been a Late Late Show with BT. Bye.